Are you ready? It is time for another episode of Broad Street and Beyond, where everything Philly sports at Central PA is in play. We leave those New York sports in the penalty box. And now, here's Chase and JT.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are on with another edition of Broad Street and Beyond. I am JT, and you can find us each and every week over on our YouTube channel. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. We're also part of the Seven Mountains Media Sports family. Head on over to 7mmsports.com. You can find us there. You can also find us on the My Froggy Valley app or the Radio Novo app. And you can take us wherever you go. I'm joined this week, happy to have on the pod this week with me. He is Mike Gross. He is a longtime beat writer for Penn State football. Gosh, you've been, let's see, what it was about 25 years you were with LMP. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and before that, the Harrisburg Patriot, Penn Live, and before that, the Lebanon Daily News.
Wow. So you've been at this for quite a while, covering Penn State for. How long is it with Penn State that you've really focused in on that?
It's about 25, almost 25 years, but really full time going to all the away games and doing all the during the week stuff. It's about 21 years or so. Yep.
So you've seen a lot. You've seen a lot.
I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot
in almost 2 decades, and you certainly have seen a lot just this past year. You've kind of had a whole lifetime worth of news to get to. But for those that don't know, Mike is also a longtime high school sports writer. He actually was my former mentor. Mike is actually the first guy that hired me in my first job in journalism. Correct. So it comes full circle here. Also,
you look considerably more professorial now than you did then.
Oh yes, then I did.
It's a good look for you.
Oh, thank you. Makes me look like I kind of half know what I'm doing. And also a recent Central chapter of the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame inductee, and just an overall swell guy to cap it all off.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I'll update my resume as soon as we're done here.
Well, you know what? I kind of think, there's certain words that sort of get lost, I think, as we go on here in the English language, and I think swell is one of them. I don't think swell gets thrown around enough.
Swell, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like it sort of has fallen through the cracks, and I'd like to see it make a comeback, and that's what I'm trying to do here today.
Wow. So we're impacting the English language, which, as you know, is a living, organic thing.
We're really doing some huge stuff here. But I wanted to get Mike on here to talk a little Penn State football here. We just came out of the conclusion of spring practice with the Penn State blue-white practice, not the game, the practice. We're talking about practice here this past Saturday. So what first off, give me your impressions on how it went on Saturday. I know it was a sparse crowd. The weather, I'm sure, had a lot to do with that. But your thoughts on the format of it being more of a practice-like atmosphere.
Well, actually, the format is not that new. The last few years under Franklin, it was more of a practice quasi-scrimmage than anything resembling a game. But this was, I think, a little bit more so. We actually have been, Matt Campbell has made 2 spring practices open in their entirety to the media before the blue-white game on during the week practices, that's completely unprecedented. So the first 45 minutes to an hour on Saturday looked almost identical to what we had seen a couple other times. And then they went 7-on-7, and then they did a little bit of 11-on-11, and they did specialized stuff like red zone, 2-minute offense, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't think there was much to be learned from actually watching this session, but it is an interesting situation because of all the moving parts, all of these transfers, the staff, and so many of the players coming in from Iowa State and melding in terms of everything, in terms of X's and O's and in terms of just connecting with each other as human beings So it's an interesting sort of experiment in that way.
Why do you think, you mentioned that it started to move in that direction under James Franklin, and it was much more so here under Matt Campbell. Why do you think the whole, the blue-white has kind of moved away from that scrimmage format into more of a practice setting?
Well, under James was very much, well, if these guys aren't doing it, I'm not going to do it. And college football has gradually moved away from a spring game. Most schools don't do it. The big exception is Ohio State. They really run what we used to think of as a spring inter-squad game. Franklin used to give us a depth chart, and then he found out that Harbaugh wasn't doing a depth chart anymore. So he said, well, if they don't do it, I'm not going to do it. He was very much that way. I think Matt Campbell is very careful about injury. He has a lot of guys that are rehabbing or not 100% or sort of limited participants. And also he's very sort of let's crawl before we can walk in terms of X's and O's and in terms of what they're doing on both sides of the ball. So he probably just, I think, wanted to take it slow and give the fans a little bit of a taste, get the players a little bit of a taste of being in the stadium. That was actually the second time that they practiced in the stadium. But, it's a college football-wide thing, really. But maybe an extreme case because of some special circumstances this year with Penn State.
So we'll get into, some of the new faces that came in from Iowa State and also the players that are coming back. But obviously the one position that's always going to get a ton of attention is obviously quarterback, and Rocco Becht has come to Happy Valley from Iowa State. I guess he was able to participate in a little bit of the 7-on-7s. He's been recovering from some shoulder stuff. But what were you able to see out of Rocco Becht, and what have you been able to learn about him so far?
He actually had shoulder surgery last year. But also, that was on his non-throwing shoulder. The throwing shoulder, he was having to have it shot up every week. He had problems with that too. So in light of that, he has looked good to me this spring. The couple of times that I was up there for practice and Saturday, he looked like he was throwing the ball. But certainly the best of the quarterbacks in terms of accuracy and arm talent, and was moving around perfectly like normal. So I think he's ahead of schedule, and it's only April. So I think he really is going to be fine by the time they start really getting ready to play football games.
Do you think, does it look like Penn State nabbed a pretty good one here? A pretty good.
I think so. I think it's important that when you hear the NFL draft geeks talk about quarterback prospects, they talk a lot about how many starts does he have in college? How many wins does he have in college? Mm-hmm. Rocco Becht is going to lead the country in both of those categories next year. He has started the most games of any returning quarterback in the country, and he has won the most of any returning quarterback in the country. I think that's significant. He's not a big dude. He's not Drew Aller. He's not the sort of classic template physically for a quarterback. But I think he's a real leader. He's unbelievably conscientious about the leadership role that a quarterback has in terms of dealing with us, in terms of dealing with his teammates. He's talked a lot about, hey, as soon as I got to State College, I was getting everybody's email and everybody's phone number, and I'm texting everybody, and hey, let's get together and throw. And he's really about that. And I think Campbell fosters that and really appreciates it. I think that's going to be a strength of their team.
How important do you think it was for Matt Campbell and what his philosophy is, what he's trying to do this year? How important was it to get Rocco to come along with him up to Happy Valley?
Yeah, I think it was pretty important because we've heard many, in Matt Campbell included, but we've heard many football coaches say over the years, ideally the head coach and the quarterback are joined at the hips. Like Andy Reid and Mahomes, and I don't know if Brady and Belichick were quite that, because those two are kind of a unique case. But I think that's really important, and just understanding the offense that they're going to run, because it is different, and to have a guy who's that well versed in it, interestingly, because Beck has been limited this spring, they brought in a transfer from Christopher Newport. He was an All-American Division III quarterback named Connor. His name's Connor Barry, and because of Beck's not being fully involved, he kind of has been the, in effect, number one guy, kind of running the show and handling everything. So he has been an asset too. But obviously, it's going to be Beck in the fall, unless there's a really bad injury problem.
That's it. That's down in Virginia, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Christopher Newport. Yeah. When you said Division III, I thought I remember in my days covering some LVC athletic games that was a school that would crop up on their or pop up on their non-conference schedule.
I think they won the national championship last year, and he was a first-team All-American in Division III.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, Division III is a different solar system, but he seems to know what he's doing, and he seems to have picked it up pretty quickly. Although it does feel to me like they've been very remedial as far as installing everything. They really have been conscious of going slow and making sure everybody knows what they're doing.
Is there any sort of, have they disclosed any sort of, general timeline with Rocco as far as like when he's going to be ready to go at full strength, and do they anticipate any?
Yeah, he keeps saying that and the coaches keep saying that he's ahead of schedule. And okay. I don't even think that's going to be an issue. I think by August he will be back to normal.
What do you, when you're covering something like this, like a practice that's getting a lot of attention, what's your approach and how you cover it? What you're looking for, how you pick out certain things that that you're looking to hone in on?
I just it's not easy. It's not easy to come up with anything that is conclusive or that people would want to read. But I do try to keep position groups, starting units. I tend to look at offensive lines, even though people don't think offensive line's very sexy. I think it's very important, if for no other reason than that you have to have 5 of them on the field every snap, and that they have to have some cohesiveness. They, wide receivers don't really have to have chemistry with each other. Linebackers don't really need to have chemistry. Offensive linemen do. And that's one, I think the number one thing that I would say is good news for Penn State fans out of this spring is their offensive line is in way better shape than I expected it to be. That's something I sort of paid attention to. And, you want to see skilled position guys stick out a little bit. They have a running back who's a transfer from Ohio State, a guy named James Peoples. He looks like a beast to me. He's not a big guy, kind of that Barry Sanders body type, but he looks tough. He just looks like a running back to me. And he's one that has stood out. Wide receiver, they have 20 of them, and I have no idea who's going to. I mean, the Iowa State guys are pretty experienced. I mean, their 2 leading receivers are back and did transfer to Penn State from last year. But that group, no idea. Their defensive line is going to be different because, as they have had every year for what seems like forever, they have a new defensive coordinator. And yes. He's DeAnton Lynn, the guy who played at Penn State. And he has a little bit different approach than the last few have had. The last few have had what I think of as a Jimmy Johnson style defense. Small, quick, really athletic. DeAnton Lynn likes these Vince Wilfork kind of guys.
Oh,
330-pound
yes.
defensive linemen who occupy blockers and clog the middle. And they have a couple of guys who I think are going to be able to play that role. They brought some in from UC, a transfer from UCLA, transfer from Oklahoma State. So that they're going to look a little different in that. So that's just stuff like this is what I try to pay attention to. And it's not easy. It's not easy to find stories in what is essentially a practice session.
You're saying they're gonna have a defensive line that's gonna put a lot of stress on the dining hall. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes. The sports and nutrition staff
Yes,
Well, they're not eating with the students, Johnny. They're not eating in the dining hall, big guy. They're eating in the football building. Carbohydrate loading,
yes.
protein synthesis. Don't forget about protein synthesis, my friend.
I saw a funny meme on social media the other day. It was it looked like, I guess it was a lunch lady kind of sitting on a bench hunched over, and the caption was, the lunch lady when trying to feed Jordan Davis and the new Markel Bell from the Eagles.
Yeah, it's a challenging gig. Yeah.
Yes, they'll definitely have their work cut out for them. Yeah. So you mentioned about James Peoples. I was reading some of the post game comments from Matt Campbell, and he seemed to single out Peoples and Quentin Martin as two guys that he seemed pretty high on and were pretty impressed about. And I think that's an area that people are going to, fans are going to be most interested in. They're replacing two, they got some big shoes to fill. And obviously, does Penn State have any playmakers? You mentioned about the wide receiver room. So I always feel like those two areas are going to get a lot of attention, when people have a chance to see this group in action.
Well, I'm expecting a lot of multi-tight end. So we should probably mention that group too, because Andrew Rapplier is a very talented player who returns from Penn State. There's a guy named Benjamin Brahmer, B-R-A-H-M-E-R.
Yes, I saw him. Yeah,
who is a gigantic guy. He's an Iowa State transfer, and he was actually their leader in receptions last year. Iowa State's he had more catches than any of their wideouts or anybody else. So I think, and they have 5 or 6 guys in that group. I think that's going to be a strength. I don't know. Quinn Martin, to me, he had a good game. The Pinstripe Bowl was his first game, his first carries as a college football player, and he had good numbers in that game. I didn't think I thought there were times when he could have got more. I thought there was more there. I was a little bit dubious about him, but I think he's making progress. I think he's getting stronger, which he needed to. He was more that lean, sort of willowy body type. I think he's put on some meat and some muscle, and I think they're okay at running back. I don't think they're going to be quite what they were last year, but I think they're okay there.
I think I, like you, am also very interested. You were talking about how the offensive line looked, and I think that's really, I'm really interested to see how that group comes together. I know I've always felt like watching Penn State when they get into some of these really big games, these really important games against an Ohio State and Michigan. I always felt like even when Penn State's had some good teams and a chance to, under Franklin, a chance to maybe knock one of those teams off, I always felt like they lost the battle in the trenches a lot of times, and kind of got pushed around when it mattered most.
And their best run, if you remember, the run they made in 2024, where they went to the semifinals of the playoff, that was when that offensive line came together. And they if you remember the Big Ten championship game against Oregon, their defense just got steamrolled early in that game. They seemed hopelessly behind. They want to run the ball, so you can't come from way behind running ball. Well, they kind of did. They really blocked the hell out of Oregon in that game, and I thought their offensive line played well even in the Notre Dame game. Late in the year, that was the best run the offensive line had, and as a result of that, we all thought their offensive line was going to be the biggest strength of their team last year. It didn't turn out that way. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why, but I think I'm surprised at how good a shape they appear to be in that unit. And I'm going to give you one name, even though most people don't even notice the offensive center. They have a guy named Brock Riker, who is going to be the starting center, I'm certain. He's a transfer from Texas State, of all places. And coming out of high school, those were the kind of offers he had. Texas State, Stephen F. Austin, Tarleton State, and he's only a redshirt freshman. But in the portal, his offers were Penn State, Oklahoma, Alabama, Miami, Texas, etc. And they have raved about him. He's a leader. He's a guy we can build around. And that's the guy where you really didn't know what you didn't have any idea at the end of last season who the center was going to be. This guy maybe is a name to watch, and the rest of their offensive line kind of fits together, and you can kind of anticipate how it's going to be, what the starting five is going to be in the fall. But that guy Riker, I think, is kind of the key to it.
Is there anybody else that can, I don't know how easy it is in that kind of format with, the blue-white practice for anyone that maybe people didn't know about that can kind of make themselves stand out and get noticed, but anyone along those lines that maybe people might not know a lot about, but maybe stood out a little bit last Saturday?
Well, they have, I don't know if he stood out last Saturday, but he's a guy who's kind of has stood out throughout the spring. His name is, I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's a transfer safety. He's a transfer from Iowa State. He was all Big 12 last year. His last name is Hill. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm not great with names, but he's going to be a really good player. Two of those defensive tackles that I was talking about. There's a guy named Armstrong Nodum, who's a transfer from Oklahoma State, and a guy named Keanu Williams, who's a transfer from UCLA. Those two guys could be that kind of road grader, 330-pound beast in the middle of their offensive line, who I think are going to have a chance to be really good. And Williams was with DeAnton Lynn at UCLA, where he was 2 years ago. Last year, Lynn was at USC. And I think Penn State had to throw some money at him to pry him loose from Lincoln Riley out at USC. And then the two guys who have really not participated, returning guys from Penn State who really have not participated this spring at linebacker, Tony Rojas and Alex Tash. I think those two guys, particularly Rojas, certainly has ability to be like a first-team all-conference kind of guy. But he was injured last year. He's slowly working his way back. I think he's going to be good, but we didn't get to see much of him in the spring.
What are your early impressions of Matt Campbell?
He uses the word holistic a lot. There's a little bit of new agey feel to this guy, which I didn't see that coming. Beyond that, he's very conscious of team building, bonding. Let's communicate. Let's work on chemistry. Let's work on how we're going to handle it when things go badly. He talks about that all the time. There's going to be bad things happen. How are we going to deal with it? He's very focused on that. His assistant coaches, who we've gotten to talk to quite a bit and talk about him quite a bit, have said he's a guy that behind the scenes you can really bust his chops quite a bit. You can make fun of him. He's a little bit of a nerdy guy. The offensive coordinator told me his family is way cooler than he is. It's that kind of thing. I think he's a guy who can come off like a regular guy while he's pontificating about holistic things, So he's a big talker, much like Franklin. In that way, he likes to talk, and you ask him a question, and he answers the hell out of it. So in that way, and I think all of the intangible stuff about all these moving parts and making it all fit, as far as I can tell, he's done as good a job at that as you could do.
Yeah, that kind of led into my next thought or next question, as far as the job that he's had to do and sort of this melding together of who's back from Penn State, that were part of James Franklin, the guys that came along with him from Iowa State, and same with kind of meshing the coaches that he brought along and the guys that have been retained on staff. I feel like maybe it was more similar, but I feel like it was a little different when, Franklin kind of had a little more of a, there was more of a total cleaning house when the transition was made, from, after what happened with Paterno to Bill O'Brien to James Franklin, where seems to be more of, there's a little bit more retention in terms of players and staff, where he's had to, build this roster on the fly almost.
Yeah, it's similar in some ways. It's different in some ways. Of course, when James got there, they were still under the NCAA sanctions from the Sandusky mess. At one point in spring of his first year, they only had 8 offensive linemen in uniform.
Yeah,
I mean, you could barely practice, and now they have 20 offensive linemen. I hate to keep talking about the offensive line, but it's just a barometer of things. But another unique element of this is Iowa State had a longtime defensive coordinator who I'm sure Campbell wanted to bring with him, but he's an older guy and he just decided to retire. He didn't want to move halfway across the country at this stage in his life, so he retired. So now you not only do you have this melding of Iowa State guys and Penn State guys and all the cultural things and all the terminology thing that go with that, but all of those players, all of the players in the entire roster, are learning a new defense and a new approach to defense because of D'Anton Lynn. Iowa State ran a 3-4. They're not going to run a 3-4. They're going to have the 4-3 with 2 big guys in the middle. So it's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and you got to recruit. I think it's fortunate for Campbell and the staff that the post-spring practice transfer portal has been abolished, because at some point your head's just going to explode if you're grinding it out all year round. And now they have a little bit of a chance to they're still going to focus on recruiting, and they've gotten some traction in recruiting, but this is a little bit downtime the next month or so.
Do you think Penn State and Pat Kraft got the guy they wanted, or did they sort of fall into Matt Campbell?
I think they sort of fell into Matt Campbell.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Pat Kraft butchered this process, and firing Franklin when they did, and apparently not having a real plan. And I don't know if you can have a real plan in October if you fire your coach in October. But I got to tell you, when they lost those back-to-back games to UCLA and Northwestern, and particularly the Northwestern game at home, where Northwestern just ran straight at them at the end of the game and ran out the clock, it was unbelievable. And I thought, I was sitting in the press box covering that game thinking, this might be it. This might be the end. So I actually went down on the field. They let us down on the field with like 5 minutes left. So I went down in the field just to see it. And Franklin walking off the field and hugging his family, and the people just screaming at him and cursing him. It was unbelievable. It was really a sad thing to watch, a sad, brutal, awful thing to watch. His daughter, I remember his daughter was walking right toward me, and she was just like weeping uncontrollably. And Franklin came walking in behind her, and he was going to go to the locker room, and he stopped and came over and walked past me, went over and hugged her and everything. It was just an awful scene. And it was certainly at that point untenable for Franklin to be the coach starting next season. He wasn't going to last beyond the just completed season, if I'm making any sense. So they had to make that move. Making it then made it very, very difficult. And I think they kind of got lucky with Matt Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, in the midst of what, it kind of started, when they lost that game at home to Oregon, and then it seemed like it was just the hangover effect from UCLA and into Northwestern.
Yeah.
Listening to a lot of content that was out there, it was pretty clear that it seemed like this was going to be the last season with James Franklin as the head coach, but it just sort of happened, like you said, it just sort of happened all so quickly. I guess I got to ask you, was there any, I mean, you talk with all the other people that are covering the team. Did this catch everybody by surprise, or was there any sort of sign, maybe going into the season or going in at least to the Big Ten season, that things were kind of on shaky ground?
Well, not going into the season. because everybody was super high on them. And I mean, people who know a lot about this sport were predicting them. People who have a track record as predictors were predicting them to Phil Steele, had them number one in the country going into the season. Other people that I pay attention to and respect had them first or second in the country. They were expected to be a national championship contender. And it's easy to understand why, given what they had returning and the way the 24 season ended. They probably were a little overrated going into it. I mean, if you look back to the 24 season, I mean, they basically beat Minnesota on a fake punt. They barely beat Wisconsin. I mean, they were very close to being 9-3, in which case nobody would have had this. There would not have been the preseason hype leading into 25, right? But to have it fall apart the way it did, no, I don't think anybody saw that coming, and it was just it was astounding to me. The way they collapsed after losing to Oregon, which was a game in which they had a touchdown lead in overtime.
Yeah,
and ended up losing to a team that was that ended up being top 5 in the country and will be top 5 in the country going into next season. So it was unbelievable in that respect. But if they'd have made inroads to Matt Campbell in October, now Matt Campbell says, I don't even have an agent because I don't want to think about jobs during the season. Don't talk to me about other jobs during the season. And Matt Campbell, by the way, turned down the Detroit Lions when they hired Dan Campbell. And was definitely, I'm not sure if he turned it down, but he definitely was a candidate for USC when they hired Lincoln Riley. He's a very respected guy in the business. Penn State is very fortunate to have gotten him, I think, almost despite the way they handled the process.
Well, you throw you throw a bunch of lawn darts out there, and one of them's liable to land in the target, right?
Another podcast that I do, we had Matt Millen on as a guest, and he was saying that at some point in the process, he got on the phone to Pat Kraft. And he said, and Millen wasn't taking credit for the hire or anything. He made a point of saying that, but he said he got on the phone to Pat Kraft and he said, dude, if you can get Matt Campbell, go do it. Don't overthink this. If you can get that guy, you should be doing it. Now, whether Kraft listened to him right away or listened to him after the Brigham Young guy turned him down and he was kind of desperate, I don't know. I don't know that. I would like to know that.
Pat Kraft versus the Crumble Cookie is a grudge match that I would have paid money to see.
Yeah, that could headline a pay-per-view.
Yeah, I could see that next WrestleMania. Your thoughts here as we wrap up this Penn State talk of the guys that were drafted this past weekend in the NFL, the Katron Allens, the Drew Allers, the Nick Singletons. Any surprises there? Or did they go where you kind of figured they might go?
I wrote a piece where I predicted where they would all go. The other week, and the first one I got exactly right. Vega Ione to the Ravens in the first round, but that was easy. A lot of people got that right. I'm not taking any credit for that. He was the number 1 interior lineman in the draft by absolute consensus, and the Ravens make a lot of sense for him. The rest of them. But I also predicted Drew Aller going in the 3rd round to the Rams. And when the Rams picked Ty Simpson, well, then you knew that wasn't going to be right. Although Aller did go in the 3rd round. So, yeah, I would say generally they did about what I thought they would do. The forgotten guy in this whole Penn State group, this 2022 recruiting class, is Drew Shelton, who is a left tackle, and left tackle is a very high priority, and you can make a lot of money as a left tackle in the NFL. I think he went in the 4th round to Dallas.
Yes,
so it'd be
sounds
interesting
right.
to see what happens there. the running backs, I thought they went about where I thought. They're both have strengths and weaknesses that they weren't a no-brainer. I thought Dennis Sutton would maybe go around earlier, but there's so many edge rushers, and but there's also so many teams that want edge rushers. Every year you look at the draft, and 2/3 of the teams in the league draft needs edge, and so I thought he would go maybe a round earlier than he did. But other than that, it went roughly the way I thought it.
Yeah, speaking of Drew Aller, I found a mock draft a couple of days before that had Drew Aller linked to the Steelers, but in the 4th round instead of the 3rd round.
Yeah, I thought once there were 3 quarterbacks taken, like Carson Beck. I'm not a fan of him. I have not been impressed with Carson Beck. Once he went ahead of Aller, then I thought, the 4th or 5th round was certainly a possibility for him at that point. I'm not sure that's a great situation for him because, he certainly is a developmental pick. He's got some work to do to refine his game. And, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, then he's battling with 2 other guys, Mason Rudolph and Will Howard, the former Ohio State guy. And if he doesn't come back, then I guess he's competing with those other 2 guys to play right away. That would not have been the number one best situation, in my view, for him. But I like Aller. I see his limitations. I get it. Certainly his performance in the biggest games of his career was substandard. But I just like him. I think he's a good guy, and I hope it works out for him.
I think I saw a couple of clips. Terry Smith was just on a Pittsburgh sports radio station. Yeah, I saw that
too. He was on a radio show in Pittsburgh, and he said,
he talked a little bit about Drew Aller and that maybe that the system that he was in at Penn State maybe didn't play enough to his strengths and his attributes.
I think that's a fair statement. I think James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki both. I think if you injected them with truth serum, they would tell you we would rather have a dual threat quarterback than a pro style quarterback for the way we want to play. And Drew Aller was definitely not a dual threat quarterback, although I thought he was reasonably effective extending the play as a runner, with his legs and knocking people over, and it's 3rd and 4 and the coverage clears out and there's space in the middle, take it and move the chains. I thought he was pretty good at that, but you're not going to have called running plays for Drew Aller. Right. So I think there's something to that. I know that's what Terry Smith thinks, because he clearly changed some things about the offense once he became the interim head coach.
For those that don't know, Mike not only is a Penn State guy, but he follows everything. He's a follower of all sports. Fella, what's the Phillies, man? What's going on?
The Phillies suck. This just in.
Yes, they did.
The Phillies suck. I'm a big believer in baseball. I'm a big believer in this whole idea of sample size. You can't draw grand conclusions from small sample sizes. But I'm also a believer in run differential. Okay? If half the game is scoring, the other half is stopping the other guys from scoring, their run differential is minus 54. Yes. 28 games into the season. It's the worst in the major leagues by 24.
That's insane.
That's not good. And actually, the run prevention piece of it has been a little worse, and I don't think they're going to continue to pitch this badly. So maybe there's some hope in that, and the fact that 40% of the major leagues makes the playoffs, which don't get me started on that. But so maybe that's a reason to still have hope. But right now, they suck. They are the worst team in Major League Baseball, and it's not close. And I'm surprised.
As we're recording this, about an hour or two ago, they canned Rob Thompson. They decided.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they.
Boy, and here, Johnny, you just touted me following everything.
Well, but it was awfully close to when you were probably doing your extensive prep for this podcast.
I was prepping my.
So they, and I think so. Don Mattingly is going to be the interim manager for the rest of the season. Now there's a report out there from Bob Nightingale that they had offered the job to Alex Cora, who was just recently fired by the Red Sox. He turned it down, and so they've gone with Mattingly now as the interim manager for the rest of the season. I think there was a lot of whispers, there was a lot of smoke that this was going to happen, coming off of this road trip. And I think it seems like a lot of people realize that it really wasn't Rob Thompson's fault. No. But what if you're looking to make a change and shake things up, I don't know what other course of action they have. Right. They can't start trading guys like Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber and Trey Turner. And I think they've tried to trade Alec Bohm before. They really haven't gotten any kind of offer that they feel like would be fair value for him. So I guess this is the play that you have.
Yeah, they're as locked in, at least for this year. They're as locked into their roster as you could be. I mean, it's a very veteran group, and the old Branch Rickey thing of you get rid of players before they start to decline. Well, maybe they missed that opportunity. I don't know. Right. Maybe they. I mean, but I think the feeling around this team was very much, we got this really good veteran group. Let's make another run at it with these guys, and then maybe at the end of this season we'll take a look at some things if it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how to value what baseball managers do. I really don't. I have no idea how to put a value on that. So I don't know how good. I don't know what he was. Now I suspect that with Alex Cora, maybe he just wants to be away from it for a little while, and maybe he doesn't want to go to the National League or something like that. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to enter a situation with all those veteran guys. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I mean, I don't necessarily think, well, Alex Cora got offered the job and looked at the team and said, hell no. I don't think it's like that. But yeah, I thought of that when they let him go, which was a surprise to everybody. I thought maybe Thompson's in trouble and maybe Cora would be next, but Mattingly makes sense. But hey, he's not going to fix this. The players have got to. Maybe Zach Wheeler can fix this a little bit, but I don't know. You
would have thought if they were going to turn things over, that they would have done so more so this past off season, where but they were pretty committed to bringing Schwarber back and Real Muto, but that would have been the opportunity to try to maybe change up this core a little bit for better or worse. As a Phillies fan, I'm hoping that it doesn't turn into a situation. If you remember, they had that run from like 2007 to 2011, 5 years in a row, where they were really good. Yeah. And then it kind of, at 2012, it just sort of started to all like that core, the Rollins, the Hutley, the Howards, they just kind of all aged, and it just sort of went. I think it was 2012, they were 500, and then it just got progressively worse. I really hope that isn't what we're in for, this season and years on. But
honestly, that's what it looks like, though, right? Right. When you look at the ages of the guys in this roster, I don't think it was crazy for them to think, hey, we got this group together. It's going to be tough to. I mean, let's make one more run at it. Even if we do limp around a little bit during the season, you can still make the playoffs. Anybody that can make the playoffs can win. And I don't think that was a crazy thing to think, but it looks crazy now it's still April, Oh my goodness.
Boy, it's going to be a long summer. Real quick, any thoughts on this Sixers Celtics series? I think the Celtics close it out tonight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Sixers are just they seem doomed. There's a sense of doom when you watch that team in there, and there's a lot of things to like about that team. And in retrospect, and some guy said this on ESPN yesterday morning, I didn't even think of it. Maybe they should have brought Embiid off the bench once he was ready to play. Maybe they should have used him as a change of pace, because he so stifles the way they play right now.
Yeah. It's so obvious
that that he
Right.
kind of was impeding Maxey. That was an obvious example of that the other night. And maybe they should have brought him off the bench. He is not the rim protector that he once was, not even close. So I don't know. Maybe you think about the Sixers, you just shake your head. These two young guards, Paul George can be a good basketball player.
Right.
And I kind of like Kelly Oubre, believe it or not. I think I'm kind of a fan of Kelly Oubre. And Joel Embiid, he had 26. What do you have? 26 and 10 the other night. I mean, that's 5 pretty good NBA basketball players. But they're just they're not good.
It's funny. I think they're built to be a team that could on any given night could probably give any team in the NBA a problem, but they're not built for a long series. They're not built to grind out a series. And it's funny. It's funny to watch a team be. You can be on one hand, like you said, you can be very excited about these two guards that they have for the future, and then it's all as excited as you are. You're tempered by the fact that they're saddled with these Embiid and Paul George contracts that limits their flexibility to do anything significant, for the next couple of years as far as building a roster.
Yeah, it's really difficult, and some of the teams some of these teams in the East, like I'll give you, Orlando is. Have you ever seen an 8 seed play a 1 seed and just physically beat them up and push them around?
Yes. It's crazy.
I'm astounded by that. But you throw them into the mix, and hey, Indiana's going to be back next year, right? When they get healthy and plus have a lottery pick. And, it just, there's a sense of doom surrounding the Sixers, Johnny. It's doom.
Well,
I hate to say that.
Well, I'm looking out the window and I see some dark clouds. So I guess that's appropriate.
This time of year, wait a couple minutes and you'll see something different.
Well, that's true.
I've seen 3 different weather systems the 3 times I went out of the house today.
So for those that don't know, Mike has a Substack newsletter. It's called The Gross Rational Product. You can go over to Substack.com and you can search for it.
Substack.com, and for people who don't know what this is, it's a platform that a lot of writers and a lot of journalists have used to kind of get away from traditional media. I did it because I retired from newspapers. And there's a lot of good stuff on there. If you like to read, if you like writing and admire writers, there's a lot of good stuff on there. You can just get on there or you can subscribe for free, or you can subscribe to the stuff that's behind a paywall. Like some of my stuff is behind a paywall. But anyway, it's Gross Rational Product. It's pretty much the Penn State coverage that I've always done, but then some other things too, some just general sports things, and even some things outside of sports. I hope people will check it out. It's a newsletter model. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm not saying I'm great, but I'm saying the Substack model is a pretty good model for people who like to read and like to read and think.
Well, this is hey, I'm giving you an open forum to toot your horn here, man. I
appreciate that, big guy. I appreciate that. I'm doing a lot of podcasts. I'm doing it 3 a week usually, and trying to put it out there. And also, you can access the podcasts on Substack and on Gross Rational Product.
Do you have anything that you got cooking on the stove right now?
I'm going to do a kind of a overall reaction to the draft, to the NFL draft. Some of the stuff we talked about with the Penn State guys, but then some non-Penn State stuff too. Like, did you see this guy that the Eagles drafted from Nigeria? Who's never played football? I love that.
He looks like a freak of nature. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. So he's 6'5", 306, and he ran a 4.6 40.
Oh my God! Like
if they played football, they think he's going to be a defensive lineman, but we'll see. It worked with Jordan Mailata, you may remember.
Right. Boy, if they could get anything out of him, if they can develop this kid.
They got him in the 7th round.
Yeah.
They got him in the 7th round. I mean, they had 3 7th rounders, so why not take a shot? And I like their organization. I like the way they do things, but I'm really intrigued by how this guy turns out.
Did I see? I don't know if it was one of their late round draft picks or maybe an undrafted free agent that they brought in. Is the son of Mitch Williams?
I did not see that. No, I don't
think
know.
it might be. It might be one of their UDFA's. Declan Williams.
Yeah.
Declan Williams is the kid's name. He was a defensive back out of Incarnate Word, and
I think I remember that his kid was playing football at Incarnate
yes.
Word. Yeah.
And he is the son of Mitch Wild Thing Williams.
Shades of 1993. You're sending chills down my spine.
Well, I'd rather not go down that road. Mike, it has been a pleasure to get a chance to talk some Penn State football with you and some Philly sports. I'd love to do this again. Maybe we'll.
Oh yeah, definitely. Look me up, and we'll do it. I love podcasts. I like doing them. I like hosting them. I'm happy to do it anytime.
Well, we appreciate it. We were coming to you today from the Fairview Golf Course Studios. Great golf in Central PA. Right now, well, maybe not a great day to golf, but coming up pretty soon. Go to fairview.distinctgolf.com. Remember, you can catch us here on our YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe, and over at 7mmsports.com and on the Radio Novo app. Mike, we'll do this again. Maybe we'll get you on closer to the start of the season before things really get busy. And thanks for coming on Broad Street and Beyond.
My pleasure, my man. Always.